Hello, welcome to the Nintendo Bros podcast. This is Pete.
And this is Derek.
And this is a very special episode because we're going to talk about the year 2022. Isn't that right, Derek?
Yeah, but I think all of our episodes are special, but
I think all of them are
I guess
special
you
too.
don't.
But this is, we're talking about a lot of big games over the course of an entire year. We're looking at years here, years. Not just weeks. So for those listening, you can actually check out our YouTube channel and you can see both Derek's and mine. We have a top 10 video where we each talk about our top 10 games from 2022. So this is kind of our post discussion about it, and also we're going to be reviewing kind of Nintendo and Switch's year and maybe comparing it to some of their previous years as well. So Derek, why don't we start us off? Why don't you just tell us your overall, before we jump into the reading list again, what's your overall feeling from 2022, game-wise?
Yeah, I thought it's kind of funny. I found 2022, the first part of it, really, really strong. I didn't find very many of the holiday games to kind of jump out to me and make my Game of the Year list, or at least not very high. I found some of the indies pretty good, but yeah, I really think that first maybe 4 or so months were really strong.
Yeah, it's funny, when I look back on the full year, most of my games are from the end of the year. And then I look at
mine
your
too,
list.
Actually.
Yeah, but I mean, you have a few more than I do
yeah.
at the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, some of my highest are from the beginning, but yeah, I just didn't find I didn't have a really big. Usually, I kind of go in with the holiday game is usually going to be really high, and I guess spoilers, but God of War is high for me, but I still didn't feel like it was. I don't know if it was just me, but I didn't feel like there was that big holiday game in my mind. Maybe that's just because I got Bayonetta 3 late, and Nintendo didn't really have anything else big in my mind. I didn't, Splatoon didn't feel like that to me. But yeah, I found the first half just felt way more monumental.
Well, it's interesting this year because I kind of look at it like, I mean, putting Elden Ring aside for a second, because Elden Ring's obviously a behemoth. It sucked a lot of the air out of the room. I always use that phrase, I know. But everything else that came out this year really felt like there was a lot of really, really good games, even great. But there wasn't, you're right, there wasn't really a lot of mega hitters. You know what I mean? Like, other years you look back on, there's usually that big, there's a few big holiday games. And this year, I think we really felt with, Sony not really bringing a PS5 exclusive for the holiday, Xbox having nothing. No, but that's PS4 as well. I meant PS5 next gen, pushing the next boundary exclusive, where I don't think God of War is. And Nintendo, like you said, didn't really. They brought a lot of sequels that were well received, but they didn't really bring their big 3D Mario, big 3D Zelda, big 3D Metroid, big heavy hitting, all eyes on this holiday
critically
title.
Acclaimed, yeah.
Exactly, but then again, I'm gonna say that all of the games that Nintendo released that were their heavier games are all very, very. None were really like extremely disappointing. Bayonetta, Splatoon, Kirby, they're all Xenoblade as well. From what I hear, were all like really solid hits.
Yeah, honestly, I totally agree. I also feel the same, more or less, about Sony. They had God of War, and I know Horizon didn't come out at the end of the year, but it was big too. Even
Gran Turismo
Stray in the summer was Gran Turismo. Stray in the summer was pretty well received, and then you have Xbox that released nothing.
Here's the thing. I mean, it's for this. Are we thinking in terms of exclusives? Are we thinking in the kind of overall ecosystem? Because, yes, I agree that Microsoft as a publisher had a pretty weak year, potentially like one of the worst years I've ever seen a publisher have. But they also, I can't lie that's where I played Elden Ring, and that's where I played a lot of these next-gen games, and Vampire Survivors and Tinykins was on there. So
and they had some great games. I mean, Elden Ring wasn't on Game Pass, but you're right. They had some great games on Game Pass this year. And, as we get into this 2023 year, I think this, knock on wood, will be a big year for Xbox because they have a lot of these things boiling. So hopefully they finally come to fruition in the next 12 months.
Absolutely. But just looking back on 2022, What would you give it out of 10?
Ooh, I'd probably give it like an 8.7.
Okay, I didn't go down to the point one scale. I put 8.5.
8.5. 8.5. Yeah.
I put 8.5 overall, and I also put, as for Nintendo Switch, 8.5. But I wanted to ask you, now imagine the year 2022 without Elden Ring. Now what score do you give it?
I'd give Nintendo a 7.5, and without Elden Ring, I'd give the year a 7.5.
Oh, really? Okay, because without Elden Ring, I'd probably give the year a 7, maybe a 6.5.
Okay, yeah. Mine was 7 or 7.5.
I really feel like the strength of the year is dependent on having one of those big groundbreaking titles, and I think the only one from this whole year that I can really give that claim to is Elden Ring.
But in all fairness, like I know, to a lot of people, God of War and Horizon are big, and a lot of people they don't feel like they stood to Elden Ring, but those are big games. So I know you didn't play them, but even with Elden Ring, you got a year with God of War, Horizon, a Bayonetta 3, a good Call of Duty. You got some really interesting indie games coming out. You got a new Splatoon sequel. So I know there's a lot of sequels, but I wouldn't give this year a 6.5. Like I definitely give it at least a 7.
Maybe. I mean, I get it's hard.
Just an opinion.
It's hard to parse through like what the overall feeling is, and also my own personal feelings, right? Because for me, I don't think God of War Ragnarok. I mean, I haven't played it, but it looks a lot like the first one. It just doesn't seem like it's really breaking any new grounds, and so I don't see it as a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I don't think it's a 10 out of 10, and I don't think God of War is anywhere near as awesome as Elden Ring is, but God of War is my number 2 for the year. So if I took out Elden Ring, would I have been disappointed with this year? No. Would I found it pretty good? Yeah, I think I still had games that I was pretty hyped for, that had a lot of discussion, that were well made. It wasn't like, there's been years where it just felt like no good games had come out at all.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, I think overall it was a really strong year across the board.
Yeah.
Well, Derek, why don't you tell us your top 10 list here? I'm looking at it. Why don't you read it?
So I'll just go from number 1 down. So we got Elden Ring, God of War, Horizon 2, Forbidden West, Bayonetta 3, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which is a big surprise for me to even have that on the list, Vampire Survivors, 13 Sentinels, and I know that game came out I think last year, but I got it on the Switch, so I put it on because that came out this year. Immortality, Splatoon 3, and Tinykins.
Nice. Yeah, so my list is number 1 Elden Ring, then Splatoon 3, then Bayonetta 3, then Kirby and the Forgotten Land, then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, Sonic Frontiers, Vampire Survivor, Tinykins, Wordle, Somerville, and then number 11 I added was Immortality.
I don't think Wordle should count. But
yeah, to be honest, I thought Wordle did come out this year, so my mistake.
It's been around for a few years. It just only became popular this year, yeah. But it's like became so popular this year, you almost should be able to count it.
Yeah, it was interesting to have a game that really kind of transcended the medium. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like the same word for everyone. You could talk to people without even having the game in front of you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And just having a group of people. Even like mom in there playing this game every day. Obviously it's died down. Like she doesn't play anymore, but for a while it was kind of a craze.
Yeah.
So exactly. I gotta give it some credit for that as like the mobile kind of game sensation of the year.
Yeah, it's almost like the kind of Candy Crush wave, right? It's like one of those games that isn't that awesome, but somehow it just swept the nation.
Yeah, totally. I thought it was interesting how you didn't end up putting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge on your list at all. I thought that was kind of surprising.
I had written it down as like number 14. It was competing with Splatoon, Tinykins, that, and Triangle Strategy for 9 and 10 spot.
Okay.
And honestly, like I only played that game maybe 3 times. I played it with you when we played it that first time. I played it once with my buddies in person, and it's like I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had a group that like wanted to keep playing it, but I just kind of played it a couple times and just never played it again.
Well, it's almost like, I mean, that's almost the curse of the beat 'em up genre, right? There's just really not a lot of depth, especially once you beat the game. But I guess I appreciate it more in the sense that I feel like years down the road in my life, I'll pick it up for another playthrough, and just how well done it was in that sense, and how easy it'll be to pick up and play forever. It feels like a timeless in a way where I don't need to have. Yeah, clearly, I almost probably played it the same as you, but it's been fun. It's been an easy game to pick up and play with friends, and I just feel like they did such a good job of taking the Turtles in Time beat 'em up
Formula.
mold and like bringing it back with really awesome music and good bosses and throwbacks. I mean, it's got a Wu-Tang song in it. Like it is kind of awesome. You know what I mean?
It's a very I totally agree. It's a very well made game. I just like as far as a good game goes, it's very very high. I just for me I didn't play it enough to get much out of it. And I agree with you kind of how you said it's timeless and you'll always go back to it. That's how I feel about Splatoon 3. Like, when I talked about it in our top 10 video, I even said like Splatoon I don't love Splatoon like the way you do. Like,
I read your breakdown on Reset Era.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I really like it. I just I don't love it. So it's one of those games where like I know I'm gonna like it every time I play it, and I know I'm gonna be playing it for quite a while. So it's kind of like do I put the long lasting like appeal higher than a game I really liked for 3 days, which I did.
True. I mean, it's all how we compartmentalize our enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But I guess for me, Splatoon 3 it's obviously high on my list, but I look at that as kind of a game that I'll come back to for a while, for maybe 2 years, and maybe there'll be a DLC updates and big updates that get me to come back. But it'll eventually dwindle out, and the servers will go down, and they'll have to release Splatoon 4 eventually. Where I don't Shredder's Revenge, I can literally dust off my Switch when I'm in my 70s and go for a romp through that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it'll feel just as good, right? It'll still take me back to my 30s. For my list, there was I would say between Elden Ring and Splatoon 2, there's a pretty significant drop, I'd say. And between Kirby and the rest of my list, there's a pretty big drop. My number 2 being Splatoon 3, 3 being Bayonetta 3, and 4 being Kirby Forgotten Land. Those are all like it was. I honestly all year those 3 were changing positions. Like I love all 3 of them about the same. And ultimately, I kind of just chose based on my playtime hours because I played Splatoon 3 so much. So
yeah, it's kind of funny because I felt the exact same way. I had Elden Ring way above, but my number 2, 3, and 4, so God of War, Horizon, and Bayonetta 3, I was interchanging, and I kind of came down to, I just felt like if I was really reflecting on which game was a game of the year, even though Bayonetta 3 for moment to moment I probably was like way more into than God of War. Like I can't deny that God of War just has a total complete package where every part of the game is high quality, where Bayonetta is like, even though the gameplay part of it was really really fun and maybe better than God of War, there are some parts of that package that aren't fully there.
yeah,
so I kind of based it on that.
There's leaks on the ship with Bayonetta.
Exactly, but so all 3 of those games, they have some slight cons, but the pros are all up there that I can kind of swap between all 3 of those on any day. But yeah, I agree. Elden Ring just stands above.
I was pretty surprised to see even Bayonetta 3 get as high on your list as it did, because I'm used to you kind of naysaying the things I like, and I told you to play it. So we haven't actually talked on the podcast about Bayonetta 3. So why don't we just touch on that a little bit? Like, what was your overall impressions? Have you beaten it, and like, how do you feel about that overall in the series?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because Bayonetta 1, I played on the Wii U, and then immediately played Bayonetta 2 right after. And I think we talked about this on a podcast before, where I didn't love Bayonetta 2, and I was kind of just grinding out the main story as fast as possible because I was already burnt out because I was playing Bayonetta 1 and 2 back to back. So I went into Bayonetta 3 kind of feeling like, oh, I'm not gonna like Bayonetta 3. It's not gonna feel as good as it's not gonna feel good because I didn't like how Bayonetta 2 felt. Mm-hmm. But I got into it, and the moment you get those demon slaves, it just is such a different way to play the game, like any kind of fighting game like this, like a ARPG.
Yeah.
And it just feels so batshit crazy.
Wait, it's not
And
an ARPG. Would you say it isn't? It's
I
not
thought ARPGs were like Devil May Cry and God of War, the old God of War. And
I think an ARPG is almost like a kind of like a like BioWare games, Anthem. I think of these as I call them character action games, like Ninja Gaiden, Devil May Cry, and this. Right?
Oh, maybe I don't really know I thought
Yeah,
it was ARPG.
I think ARPG refers to something where it's literally more leveling and literally more RPG mechanics, where there's very, very low leveling up and stuff in Bayonetta.
Okay.
Did you find that the beginning of it wasn't like when you first started playing it, where you're like, oh, this isn't great, and then it got better and better? Did you find that?
I felt like I didn't feel like I was able to pull off combos very well, or I didn't like the weapons. But once you kind of get a few weapons and you get kind of you purchase a bunch of their skills, you start getting really high combos, and like it's kind of funny because like I don't even know what skills I unlocked. I just bought a bunch of them and just kind of button mash half the time.
Yeah.
But you actually, the moment you unlock them and you start fighting again, you actually realize that all of your moves are just like comboing more fluidly together, and you're actually seeing different things pop out.
Yeah.
So and then once you kind of get the flow of summoning your guy at the right time, or using him in which time and all this kind of stuff, it just kind of flows better. You do get really better at the game. I started to enjoy it a lot more. I didn't dislike it at the start, but yeah, I ended up loving it. Probably by the time you get to like the first Viola session is when I was like really loving the Bayonetta feel.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it's. I mean, it's if you put our list together, it'd be our Switch game of the year.
Or Switch. Sorry, Switch. I was thinking. I was like, what about Elden Ring? But yeah, Switch game of the year.
Our Switch
definitely.
game of the year. Yeah. I was surprised to see Call of Duty so high on your list.
Me too. And like again, I even in my write up there, I said, I don't really like Call of Duty. I don't really like first person shooters. I don't really like online multiplayer games. But this game it feels so good. Like it just feels polished and clean, and the accuracy feel good, and you just have that nice sense of getting a kill or a double kill, or pulling off a sweet move. Or
are you mostly just playing the multiplayer, or are you doing zombie mode or single player?
So I didn't do any single player. There is no zombie mode. I tried the co-op mode a little bit. It was kind of whatever. Okay. I've done a little bit of the battle royale. So as opposed to like the old school maps, like where like King of the Hill and stuff. Yeah. Or deathmatch, like they actually have almost like Fortnite, where it's like a battle royale. And they added this new mode called DMZ, which is kind of cool. But honestly, the reason I really liked it the most is I had a few buddies that played, and when I played, they played, and vice versa. So it became this kind of thing where you just played with friends, and that's what really gets me to multiplayer games. And that's what I kind of warned you about Splatoon, is if you're not playing it, or we're not even communicating on it, it just isn't fun. Like it isn't as fun. Like I would have a lot more fun if we played Splatoon for a couple hours and we were on voice chat while doing it. So like it really, to me, like it's one of the more noticeable downsides of ever playing an online game with on the Switch, because you don't feel like you're in the same room playing. Where like I could play Call of Duty with Brandon or my brother-in-law, and we would just be chatting about anything, or chatting about the game, or like discussing what angle or lane to start sniping down, and you're just way more into it. So it really just clicked for me, and it feels good, and it was fun to play with people. So yeah, it ended up being really surprisingly higher than I didn't expect it to make my list at all. I was buying it for friends, and I ended up loving it.
Wow. Yeah. Probably not going to get it because I'm terrible at Call of Duty, but surprised high on the list. And, I think you told me to play Vampire Survivors. That's like super high on my list, because I don't know if I'll ever beat it, but something about just like the concept of it, I just smile just thinking about it.
But how far have you gotten? Like what do you mean by beat it? Like what have you done in it?
So I've unlocked about, I don't know, 7, you're going to laugh. I've unlocked about 7 characters, or 8. Okay. And I've gotten about 4 of the levels.
So have you made it to 30 minutes before on a level?
No.
Okay. So you haven't beaten any level?
No. I got really, really far once.
Have you unlocked any evolution? Like, do you know what evolutions are?
Is that where you on the home screen you buy permanent upgrades?
No, those are good too. It's where if you have a gun or if you have a certain weapon and a certain passive, they combine to make a brand new weapon that's super overpowered.
What's a passive? What does that mean?
So you know how when you level up, you get a choice of one of the items.
Yeah.
So one of them. So you know, have you seen the top left of your screen how you have slots that get filled?
Yeah.
The top 6 slots are weapons, and the bottom 6 slots are passive. So you'll get a thing that's like, it'll be like the knives, and it throws knives in front of you, or the whip. Those are weapons.
Yeah.
But if you get the thing like the candelabra, which like increases your the duration of the attack,
Yeah,
or the area, those are passives.
I usually try to get one of everything.
I know, but you can only get 6 weapons and 6 passives. So eventually, you can't get any. You can only upgrade. You can't get anything new.
So wait, once I get 6, does that mean what happens if I get another one comes up? It just won't come up.
So if you get if you get 6 weapons, no weapons will ever come up again. It'll only those 6 level ups will come up. So, but there's evolution. So if you get a certain weapon and a certain passive combo and you upgrade them to the max, when you open the next treasure chest, it'll unlock the evolution. So for example, like the knives, their evolution is your knives have no cool. So if you get the knives and the cooldown upgrade or something and you max them out, the evolution is your knives become super knives and they have no cooldown. So you fire like 1,000 of them in front of you at a second.
Only in that run though.
Only in that run, but
okay.
Again, so once there's actually like you probably already unlocked it, but anyways,
I have the thing you're talking about, this side menu that tells me what the evolutions are. I have that.
You should be going for those just to experience them because that's how, like they're so broken.
Well, the point is I love the game and I can tell there's a lot more depth there.
Yes, it's just like it's really.
I feel like we could talk about this for another 20 minutes probably.
I know, yeah.
But yeah, I think the thing that really gets me with Vampire Survivor is A, I love the music. B, I love the graphical retro style, and I love that you only move the cursor, or sorry, not the cursor, the analog stick. I love how it's only moving. Like it's so smart. You know,
yeah,
it's like works.
It's one of those games you can like talk to someone or like eat some food while playing, and yeah,
totally, absolutely. And then the other thing you recommended that's on my it's a little lower on my list than it's lower on your list.
Mine's
Tinykins.
Yeah.
Which I still haven't beaten, but I'm pretty close.
Nice. I didn't know where you were.
Yeah, and then
What room are you in?
I'm in the bedroom, or just beat the bedroom, I think.
Okay.
And we also both added Immortality to the list, although I kind of hesitated not to have it.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't really see. Like, I really liked it, and when I first kind of figured out the gimmick, and I first saw this, like the rewind, footage to the demon characters, it spooked me a lot. But after that, I was kind of bored of it. So it's like for that one gimmick, it was kind of like something I'd never experienced before. You know what I mean? And as someone who is a video editor, like parsing through footage, I was kind of really used to that. So to rewind slowly and have something come up like that almost probably scared me more than the average person because I'm not used to that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Like, I don't really consider it a game. I almost consider it kind of like a DVD menu interactive experience. So I don't.
Yeah, that's what I said in my write-up. It's was one of my favorite games that I wouldn't even classify as a game. It was so interesting and kind of enthralling, but I would never play it again. Like, it's not a fun game. Like, I kind of wrote, I felt a little bit like a forensic detective where you're just scrubbing through footage trying to solve a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that feeling. I was like, oh, this like feels really authentic. Like I'm actually doing this job and like doing this stuff. So it was really cool in that regard. But yeah, I agree. It's like, it isn't really fun. Like, I don't know if I wouldn't.
Yeah. And it's not really replayable, but I think in terms of like the one of the games is like the game this year that I found kind of broke through the mold. It's that game as far as like really, really treading new ground.
Yeah, pushing the envelope a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Did any observations about my list that you made?
Let me go back to your list real quick.
You're like, no.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I guess one, Sonic Frontiers is kind of interesting to be so high. Like, I know it's super fun, but it's not that well regarded of a game. There's a lot of issues with it. And the other one that honestly for me is just because I haven't played and I really want to is Kirby. And the last one I want you to comment on is Somerville. I don't think it deserves to be in anyone's top 10, but that's just
anyone. So no one's allowed to like it.
Yeah, no one's allowed to like that. Anyways, those are the 3 games I guess that I'd want to hear your commentary on.
Okay, well, the first one, Sonic Frontiers, you got it for me because I won our Metacritic annual fantasy league. Just so our listeners know who won. To be honest, I don't know why I got this. I think we're in that whole the midterm elections, and everyone on that one on Reset Era was talking about buying Sonic because of a blue wave, and I got
and people said it was really fun and the music was good and stuff.
Yeah, and there was positive impression, so I just said, screw it. And I ended up it's weird. I don't beat every game, as you know, and I almost have given up on the notion that I need to beat a game to feel like I am a whole person. But this one I played to the very end and beat it, and ended up 100%ing most of the levels. It's not that hard to 100% for one, but I think you described it when you said your friends got it, that it's so easy to turn your brain off and relax, and you just keep getting faster and faster, and there's just kind of there's a sublimeness in there. So it really surprised me by how much fun it was. And, when I look at my list, to be honest, everything from the Kirby down, from 5 until 11, you can see it. They're mostly indie games and short games and things like that. I don't think that's going to happen in 2023. I think there's going to be a lot more AAA games filling that list, right? So I kind of, this year, as much as I liked it for the overall, I can't help but feel a lot of the games I liked on a 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 level, and that's where I'd put Sonic, probably 7 out of 10. A lot of surprisingly fun and playing through the jank,
Yeah.
Kirby, to be honest, I even contemplated having this at number 1 a few times, but I beat Kirby, so I'm not really gonna come back to it. But it just feels where I have more problems with every other game on this list, if that makes any sense. I feel Kirby, I almost have no real complaints about. I feel it
doesn't hit the highs of the other games, but it also doesn't have any of the lows.
Absolutely, and it's ambitious in its own way for being the first 3D Kirby. And I read some of the behind the scenes where to actually program a 3D Kirby is not as easy as you'd think, just based on where you're aiming and how you're hitting. And they actually talked about how it's a little harder than you might think with the fixed perspective and camera and all that, and floating and where he is and everything. But they pulled it off so seamlessly. So I give them a lot of credit for that. And it's one of those games where you'll smile the whole time, and the game will never hard lock on you, or you'll never see a really gross graphical screen, and you'll never get a disconnection issue, and there just won't be those kind of issues ever. And it just feels from beginning till end, this kind of beautiful, complete package. I just, there's some part of it I just love this game so much, and I really highly recommend it.
Nice.
I just love it. I think ultimately I went with Bayonetta 3, and Splatoon 3 is bit above it because of just the many more hours I put into them.
Yeah, there's more substance.
More substance and more depth, right? Splatoon 3 has an infinite level of depth, and I kind of represent Splatoon 3 as the pinnacle of the series that I've loved, and probably haven't given the others as much credit on my lists. So it's kind of getting an unfair bias that way. And yeah, it's not quite as ambitious or breaking new grounds that Bayonetta is. And I think Bayonetta will with Bayonetta 4 and whatever Platinum does next, we'll see that it as just a stepping stone and the heights they're taking this genre, Because I thought Bayonetta 3, like we both said, there's leaks on the ship, but what a crazy, awesome, ambitious ship that's doing new things.
Yeah, seriously.
Whereas Kirby's just a beautiful little yacht, right? It's not going to be able to do as much, but it's a luxury experience.
Yeah, it's solid.
With regards to Somerville, I beat it in 2 sittings. I agree it's their worst game, and it's almost like a pity list game. Because here's the thing.
Your top 10 at a pity.
I really liked Inside and Limbo. I really like Inside a lot, and there's little moments of Somerville that remind me of a more advanced Inside, if that makes any sense. There's a few times, just a few, So I really enjoyed those moments, and I thought there was a lot of promise there. And it feels underfinished and half baked. And do you know what I mean? It feels like a step. And I'm still really into what this developer's doing and the visual style they're going for and everything. I just feel like this was a really clunky trip on one of their steps, but I still really, there was moments in the game with the atmosphere and the mood and the scope, like somehow with this graphical style, it's like there's no jaggies. It somehow feels perfect. And there was moments where you saw like off in the distance with the UFOs and there's scenes where the camera never cuts when you're floating down the waterfall, or even more intimate moments where you find the humans again in that base and you see the little groups of humans praying and sitting there and crying, and like, man, that stuff was so good. That if they could, I just feel like there's an amazing game that could have been.
Yeah. Are you gonna get and play Cocoon?
I have such little interest in that game. I because that's from the other person who left that Play Dead, right?
Yeah. I'm just surprised that you.
It's
started
just
with one, not the other.
Cocoon doesn't carry on that style of the kind of macabre, faceless, dialogueless storytelling through game design. Cocoon looks like a puzzle game, and I'm not big on puzzle games.
Okay.
So
yeah, I was just curious.
That's not, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't play as many games as you, so I find it actually hard to make a top 10. And there's always games every year I play that are from a whole different year. You know what I mean? Like
me too.
It's actually not easy to play 10 or way more games from a particular year. And I felt like things like putting Mario Golf I played a lot of this year. I played a lot of Portal. And like I played the new Mario Kart DLC, and those kind of games, like, they just don't really have a place on the list. So be that
I find
as
it also like I played Neo 1 this year, and I loved that game too. Exactly. I also find the thing I try to avoid the most is recency bias, because I find a lot. The truth is, a lot of people do this where
God of War Ragnarok in a nutshell.
Exactly. You think of the games that you played more recently as you think of them more fondly. So that's why it's, again, equally impressive that Elden Ring kind of stood throughout the whole year as just being this leagues above, even second place on either of our lists. Where I look at most of my other lists, it's like, almost every other one of those games I played in the past 3 months.
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny to think, like, when we look back on our lists in 10 years, will I care about Splatoon 3 when Splatoon 4 is out and better?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I make micro adjustments to my older game of the year list, because I look back and I'm like, man, how come I thought that game was high up on the list and when it really shouldn't be? It's like, like, for example, like even Overwatch. Like, I love Overwatch, but when I look back and look at some of the other games that came out that year, I'm like, how could I put Overwatch above, even Dark Souls 3 that I loved, or The Witness that I loved? Like, I don't know. It's just like, I always like to go back and reflect and think of, what game really stood the test of time.
But it's weird, right? Because you can look at it. I mean, there is some value to saying that while you were in the year of 2019, I think it was, with Overwatch, you loved Overwatch. And 2016, wow. And then you think many years later, there's almost two ways to look at something, right? Like, are we looking at it through the lens of how the long-lasting value or this immediate value? So I don't, a recency bias, yes, is a thing, but I don't know. I think it can work both ways, right? Like right now, okay. That's why I don't go back and like alter my old lists, because
I try not to too. I think I changed one thing, but
well,
it's kind of like, are your game of the year lists the best games that year, or your favorite games that year?
Oh, they're my personal favorite games.
Okay. So here's my next question: is does it have to be a game that came out that year, or does it have to be a game that you played that year?
A game that came out that year.
So I'm just saying, like, in 3 years from now, let's say in 3 years from now you picked up God of War.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Or Returnal, or I got into a whole new series. Exactly. That's why the whole thing is moot.
Yeah.
So same with movie reviews. Like, no one can play every game, no one can play every movie, and like so for me, I really look at it as not the top games of 2022. It's my favorite games that I played in 2022 from 2022.
Yeah, that's how I exactly.
But I think keeping the ones that I set in my list forever, and they'll be on our podcast page forever, seemingly. I like to kind of encapsulate to know. Like, I'd rather than go back and change Overwatch, I'd rather look back and be like, what was I thinking that year? You know what I mean? And I will also say that even though the order of games here, like, I don't know if these top games on my 2022 list, how they'll end up shaking out on my all-time list that is always changing. Like, I might 10 years realize I have these fond memories for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and I just don't think about Splatoon 3 at all.
Do you have your top 10 of every year somewhere, like in a row? Like for me, I have a spreadsheet where I have all of my top 10s since 2016, and I'm just looking at my number ones of each year, and I really like looking at my number ones that I've had of every year.
I am really unorganized about that. So I have my top 10 games 2022, 2021, and 2020. That's all as far back as I go. But I didn't really start thinking about this stuff until then.
No, yeah, I went back to my old like NeoGAF and Reset era. Like I went through and found all of my old posts on them, and I just typed them out in a spreadsheet so I didn't lose them.
Interesting.
It's just interesting. It's just interesting to see your number one games, how they kind of have changed or how they're similar, and how fondly I look back on my number 10 or my number ones versus my number 10s.
Yeah, and, I think too when I think about games, I prefer my all-time list because ultimately it doesn't really matter when it came out. Like I don't really think back to 1998 and be like, oh, but like Ocarina of Time came out that year and the next year was something else. I just kind of think, oh, generally where does it sit on my list? I don't know if I guess I'm as of now collecting these lists, but it's I don't know. It's I think top 10 lists are a little silly and just a way to kind of discuss good games we played,
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really go that distance, but it is cool. Yeah, it is cool to think like one day in a long, long time, decades from now, you could have this massive like collection of your own data,
Exactly.
But anyways, good year. Let's talk about the year for Switch and for Nintendo.
Okay.
Now, I sent you a list of all the notable exclusives that came out every year for Switch.
Yeah, so I read through those, and I kind of put the years in a kind of a ranked order based on a little bit of what I thought were the strongest games, but also a little bit of my own bias. But yeah.
Okay, I gave each year a score out of 10.
Okay, I ranked mine. So
okay, now let me just tell you, because if our ranks are the same. So I'll tell you my ranking from best to worst, okay? So best is 2017.
Yep.
And then 2019. And then 2022. And then 2021. And then 2018.
Yeah.
And then 2020.
So this is interesting. Our lists are identical, except 2018 and 2019 are swapped. Everything else is the exact same spot.
Your 2018 is your second favorite year.
Yeah.
Interesting. I found that really interesting. So the thing, I guess, looking through these lists, 2018 for me felt a little light because outside of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, I mean, there's not a huge amount. Hollow Knight is on that list, but I'm just thinking in terms of Switch. Right? And Hollow Knight, yes, is there, and it's an amazing game, and it was timed exclusive, and that's why I put it on the list. But I don't give it the same weight I would if it's an actual exclusive, because now Hollow Knight's on everything, and on Game Pass. So I don't know. Like, I think I put it on the list as like, oh yeah, they had this cool third-party exclusive for a while. I don't put it on the list to be like enshrined as a Hollow Knight.
So Hollow Knight came out on PC first.
I mean console exclusive.
Yeah. For me, like when I read through the list, like I just Smash Bros. It carries that year so much, and even beside that, I loved Octopath Traveler, and I think having DK Tropical Freeze and Bayonetta 1 and 2, and even Hyrule Warriors, those games are just, I know they're kind of ports, but they're just really good games that now are on the Switch. But yeah, to me, Smash Ultimate is just such like one of my favorite games of all time, one of the best games of all time, long lasting appeal. It's like that game is so big in my mind.
I love that game too. I just think that they felt really, really weak across the board on everything else for exclusives. And I got to keep in mind, like, Smash Bros came out in December, and there just wasn't a whole lot for the rest of that entire year that was that captivating or new.
Okay, so let me make my counterpoint against 2019 now.
Okay.
Is I would say the same thing about 2019, where I say, it has a lot of games, all these games that are Nintendo exclusives. To me, they're all kind of mediocre games. Like Crafted World, Yoshi's Crafted World didn't do that much for me. Mario Maker 2 is a sequel that was very similar to the first one. Three Houses, one of my least favorite Fire Emblems with all the social stuff. Astral Chain, I never got around to. It's probably my least favorite Platinum game.
Well, you haven't got around to it.
Link's, I got halfway through. Link's Awakening is again a remake, beautiful, but had some frame rate issues, wasn't perfect. Luigi's Mansion 3, loved it. To me, like that's their pinnacle of the year.
Yep.
Ring Fit Adventure, I liked, but didn't stick around forever. And I wasn't into Pokemon Sword and Shield. So I'm kind of comparing that year to 2018 in the sense of there's Smash Ultimate versus Luigi's Mansion 3, and the other year has some ports. Both years have some decent ports, and then there's Octopath and Hollow Knight versus Ring Fit and Astral Chain and maybe Fire Emblem. Like they didn't stick out to me the way 2018 did.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's a totally fair assessment. It's like comparing a year that has one juggernaut giant to a year that has a lot of good games. And I think for me, I really liked Astral Chain. I really liked Super Mario Maker, Luigi's Mansion, and it just seemed like there was a point of time during 2019 where I think it was from June or May with Mario Maker, every single month had a notable exclusive. And every month, those exclusives are getting 85 plus on on Metacritic. So it's like, whether or not your personal feelings about Fire Emblem Three Houses being the worst one, I understand that. I just mean, like, in terms of the overall scope, they had so many brand new exclusives getting these high reviews.
And I'm not disagreeing. Like they're all reviewing well and doing well, but there is no game that year. Maybe Luigi's Mansion 3, where people are frothing at the mouth for this big Nintendo exclusive. Like they didn't have one that year.
Yeah, you're right. But I'd also argue that 2022 didn't have that either. So I don't know. I think that's a perspective thing. I mean, I think for some people, it depends on what their bias is. Yeah,
I just don't think.
I mean, for me, Luigi's Mansion, at least number 3, I think that kind of peaked the series. But to me, that was like on my top 5 most wanted Switch kind of sequels. So that was a big deal for me. And for other people, they really love Fire Emblem or they really love Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel
I'm glad we both agree that 2020 was the worst, though.
Absolutely. I mean, COVID notwithstanding, I think that you and I both are not huge on Animal Crossing, and I think the only reason to think that 2020 was a good year is you have to be huge about Animal Crossing,
Yeah.
But yeah, 2020 was definitely a COVID hit year, and even 2021 felt a little weaker, like one of the weaker years. I mean, I know you didn't like Metroid Dread; that was the big hitter for me, but
yeah, but I put 21 ahead of 2019 just because I got Metroid Dread, Mario Party Superstars, which I have a lot of fun with my friends, and I freaking loved. I played the hell out of New Pokemon Snap.
True. Did you ever get Bowser's Fury?
Yeah, I bought the game and I beat Bowser's Fury.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean that was great.
Yeah, I liked it too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all how you look at it, right? Because it's interesting. You said 2021. I mean, you put Metroid Dread on the, but you put 2022 ahead of 2021. Yeah.
I put 2022 ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting to note too that usually in this point of Nintendo's life cycle of a console, I mean, only for like the last 6 consoles they've released, usually this is a dead year. This kind of 5th year, typically we'd be aiming for our next gen console next year.
You mean the 7th year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So or sooner, because the GameCube came sooner, the Wii came sooner, and the Wii U came sooner, and the Switch came sooner. So really, the only precedent we're looking at is like Super Nintendo. I don't even then like Switch is becoming very close to being the longest they've had without a successor. But the point is that typically they've kind of I love Nintendo, don't get me wrong, but they do seem to focus their software lineup around the launch of a console, and then they don't seem to be able to carry their consoles late in their life cycles. They've never really been able to. I mean, even luckily systems like the DS had enough third-party support, but I don't know how you feel, and generally, I feel like Nintendo's generally not been able to keep their console without droughts, especially in the later part of their life cycle. And this is, I feel like they finally beaten it with Switch.
I totally agree, and I also find it interesting that, for better or worse, that Nintendo often doesn't have like that year or two of overlap. Kind of, it's on, you know how it's on PS4 and PS5.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of abandon their system after their older system after a few months, and they might port a lot of those games over, but they don't actually have new releases coming out for both systems very often.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. It seems to be the way some of their fan base works. I mean, because even if you look at like the Breath of the Wild sales on the Wii U or Twilight Princess sales on GameCube, like so few people want to play those games on the old hardware. To the point where I think a lot of gamers who have to wait on upgrading their Nintendo system will wait on the big Zelda game that is cross-gen.
Yeah.
So I think where that doesn't maybe happen as much on the PlayStation end, I'm sure God of War and Horizon did very well on PS4. And I think PlayStation has their PS4s are very popular in like lower income and also like less affluent countries. They're in a lot of homes, and they still are like their people's main system. Like I hear stories of parents saving up to get their kids a PS4 this last holiday.
I knew people seriously that still played their PS2 when the PS4 was out.
Yeah, PS2 lasted a very long time, and there's people who keep their Wii plugged in for Just Dance, right? But I also think with the Switch, whenever they upgrade it, I do think that I don't think they're going to abandon, like, it's hard to, I think we're going to have almost like the same pattern that we're seeing with PS5 and Xbox Series X, where we're going to have the first year or two of Switch 2.0 having cross-gen games on both, on Switch and Switch Pro. I
agree.
Just seems to be the way the industry is moving,
Yeah, agreed.
But I guess in terms of them just Nintendo getting exclusive games at the door, overall, if I look at all these years of Switch, they've been really strong. If I could show myself this list back in like 2017, I would have blown my freaking mind.
Yeah.
Especially with this year, 2023, having Pikmin 4 and all that other stuff. So
yeah, if Pikmin 4 hits, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. But so it's been a great console for that, and they never really had a weak year. And then when I look at I did want to talk quickly about the kind of Sony and Xbox camp about their year. And obviously, you can always say, oh, well, Elden Ring came out, it was great. But in terms of exclusives, like that's what we really look at. Like the reasons these console makers give us to buy their console. What would you give PS5 and what would you give Xbox?
I don't have all the exclusives, like a list off the top of my head, but well, Microsoft I'd give like a negative 4.
I can give you the Xbox list.
Okay.
Done.
So for me, I think Sony again, God of War, Horizon, Stray, and you said another one. I think
Gran Turismo.
Gran Turismo. I don't know
Ghost
if there were other
Ghost
ones.
of Tsushima as a timed exclusive.
Okay, yeah.
And Returnal DLC and a couple others.
So they had some stuff. I mean, they had two really strong games in my mind. I'm not a big Gran Turismo fan. I know
two tent poles for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think I would say it's as strong as Nintendo as far as exclusives go. They had a lot of third parties that kind of carried them through with like Elden Ring. But yeah, I'd give it a high 6 or a low 7.
Yeah, I'd probably give Sony around a 7 too. I'm still disappointed we haven't seen a lot of like PS5 only games or anything really.
I think this year we're gonna hit quite a few.
Yeah, I guess so. You would have thought that back in maybe 2018 when they were prepping the PS5, they would have been like, okay, like let's get a game started now that's PS5 only. That's like mega amazing. And then now by the time 2022, 2023 rolling around, we're going to hear about this new exclusive amazing game. Maybe we will. Maybe it'll be next year.
I think there are quite a few exclusives coming this year.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I also, as in terms of Xbox, I'd probably give them a 4 out of 10, just because Game Pass has been really the main compelling reason, and they have added some games on Game Pass from previous years. Like I almost don't.
But those are exclusives. We were talking about exclusives this year.
Well, Game Pass as a service is an exclusive to Xbox console.
Okay, well, we can't forget about PS Plus Premium Classic.
But that's not strong. I think Game Pass is so strong that it's
I agree.
enough of a thing to be like, well, and honestly, I see this online. Well, okay, Xbox had 0 exclusives, but like, I don't know, things were free, like, Game Pass was great. So
yeah, I agree. Like a lot of games I actually played were on Game Pass. Like that was a good chunk of my gaming this year, despite having all 3 systems, despite those exclusives coming out for Sony and Nintendo. I played, almost 1/3 each because of Game Pass.
Yeah, no kidding. Like I wasn't gonna pay money for Immortality and Tinykins and Vampire Survivors. Like maybe now that I've played them, I probably would put money into them, but it's the only way I would have tried them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, solid year. Any other notes about 2022?
Nope. Just looking forward to 2023. To be honest, like I enjoyed 2022. It was a nice year. Nothing wrong with it. But I think we're kind of. I hope 2023 is gonna knock 2022 like far away. If that makes sense.
I think it will. I think when we look back on 2022, people will remember Elden Ring, and they won't talk about much else.
No, exactly.
Unfortunately, I mean, I think things like there'll be better Pokemon games that have come out. There'll be a better Splatoon game eventually. There'll be another 3D Kirby. Like all the things that we
God of War, yeah.
A better God of War. Gran Turismo 8. Another Horizon. The DLC will probably overshadow it. Like, I think the only thing we'll really, really look back on this year and be like, what was the bigger groundbreaking thing that kind of can't be changed? Unchangeable monument from this year. And I think Elden Ring was pretty much it. It was groundbreaking.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. Well, Derek, I think that about wraps up our chat.
Yeah. Are we going to do what we've been playing?
I haven't been playing much, but if you want to talk a little bit about that, sure.
No, I was just kidding. Mine are on my game of the year list. I'm still playing 13 Sentinels.
Yeah, I figured. Well, we'll talk. We'll get back to it in a couple of weeks, and we'll talk about what we've been playing. But
sounds good.
To our listeners out there, if you were listening, why don't you let us know your thoughts in the comments, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, like and subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe, and give us 5 stars and recommend. All right, Derek. Well, thanks for the chat. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, how's it going?
Right.
This is Derek.
This is Peter, signing out.
This is Derek. See you later.